Hello, and welcome to another episode of the ArenaCraft Podcast, a show focused exclusively on Magic, the Gathering Arena. My name is Arjuna. I'm one of your hosts. I am joined today not by regular co-host Covert Go Blue. He's taking a much-needed break. He's been an absolute animal these past couple of weeks, making incredible content. So instead, I'm joined by another absolute content animal. It's Daniel Emanuel. He recently went full-time as a content creator, and he's just absolutely killing it in many different arenas. DanyTLaw, welcome to the show, buddy. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Always grateful to be here. It's just super cool to hang out with you guys, and now just with you, it's fine. And yeah, CGB did a lot. So Daniel replaces Daniel today, which is...
Yes, exactly. We got another Daniel in, so that's good at least. You know, keeping it on track here. So basically what we're going to do today is DanyTLaw is going to be our constructed format expert for this week. People who listen to the podcast regularly will know that I have been focused on limited lately. We did a limited episode last time with MTG Nerd Girl, and that was really cool. So Danny's going to really catch us up. I mean, Danny, I feel like you're honestly probably one of the best people that I could have gotten for this particular week because you've been in the trenches, right?
Yeah, I've been playing Magic all day, talking Magic all day. I've been everywhere with Magic right now, researching decks and format and... Well, where do we want to start? Standard or historic? That's like the big question, right?
yeah, standard or historic, exactly. Yeah, let's go into standard. I think the majority of our listeners probably tend to focus on standard more. So let's start there. And I before we go into like the specific meta game, like I just want to say that it basically seems to me, as someone who hasn't been playing much standard since the set came out, like the predictions that people made are correct. Strixhaven really hasn't made that big of an impact on the standard format, especially like when I'm looking down these deck lists for tournaments and stuff like that. It's like very, very few Strixhaven cards. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you're definitely right about that. So there was not a clear new archetype that formed with arriving of Strixhaven. It's more like that some decks improved or some decks got more viable again, which we saw maybe in the past. And a set that comes late in a cycle, right, in an entire 2-year rotation, usually does this, right? This set would have to been as powerful as Eldraine, but it clearly was not. So you can pick some cards for decks, but yeah, the most of the old decks are still the strongest. Obviously, there are some decks that kind of come into, which we're definitely going to talk about, but yeah, you're definitely right.
Yeah, okay. So I guess what I would like to focus on is maybe the parts of Strixhaven that are impacting the format, and maybe some of the things that people need to be thinking about in the new standard meta as a result of the Strixhaven release, because like no one needs to be told that Rogues is a good deck, right? No one needs to be told that any of these adventure decks are good. Like we've just covered that ground so much, you know? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what are some key changes to the standard meta that the Strixhaven release has brought.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, we can definitely leave out Rogues and Team Adventure because those decks are basically untouched. Those two decks are really untouched. Then we have Sulta Ultimatum, who is still there, right? The Sky Noodle, Yorion, and it's still out there. And that deck got some improvement. We have to talk about Onyx there shortly, the Professor, which gives you an additional win con with the Ultimatum. And it looks on the first look, it looks a bit, but it's just another card, right? But you force opponent to give you an extra turn. Before, you didn't have that ability. Nowadays, you can just go extra turn, Onyx, Warring Collects, and you always get extra turn.
So, wait, okay, so talk me through why that decision is forced, right? Because the 3 cards that you pick with your Ultimatum are the Onyx, Warring Collects, and the extra turn.
Yep. Yeah.
I see. Okay, so they can't. Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. Mm-hmm. So they have to give you Warring Collects in the extra turn, and then you play Onyx from your No. Okay, so break it down for me.
Okay, so you cast Ultimatum. I do the pre-scenario and the now scenario. Before you had like Ultimatum, and against aggro decks you had like Kiora, Best the Sea God, Vorinclex, and Extra Turn.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's so dangerous to have Vorinclex and Kiora on the board, right? It takes something away. But you can still say, I can just play a haste the next turn, or just do something and maybe kill the enchantment, do this, and I still have a chance. Or against other decks, you had Vorinclex plus Walkie, where you can say, okay, maybe Walkie ultimates, but I could still kill something and do something.
You can still win through that,
You can still do something. But nowadays, if you have Onyx instead of Walkie at that point, if you have like 1 or 2 cards in your hand, you take 20 damage, roughly 20 damage, and you just die. So the just die is a huge problem, right? Because Vorinclex attacks you, and with the thing, you have lethal damage.
With the birds. Yeah, so that's like kind of like 14 damage minimum.
No, I mean, nowadays you have Vorinclex and Onyx, and the ultimate from Onyx says, opponent has to discard a card and lose 3 damage. Repeat this 7 more times. So you have a total of 21 damage, plus the attack of Vorinclex would be 27 damage. So if that's the main problem.
So this was one of the issues that I was running into with Vorinclex in the deck, though, is that I would consistently get... So they'd consistently let me get Alrund's Epiphany and Vorinclex. And then, which, I mean, that's fine if I had a follow-up.
Fine, yeah.
But if I didn't have a follow-up, or if they just had removal for Vorinclex, then that could be kind of weak, right?
It could be kind of weak, but the extra turn is so dangerous because those meta games tend to go to the point where, okay, I need to cast Ultimatum now, and then, and if I get an extra turn, I can do so much more. And this is kind of how it feels right now. So I think you can force an extra turn. It's really valuable. Before you couldn't force the extra turn. Just to have this ability is huge, and also having 2 Planeswalker in the mirror match is also really good, because you can go Walkie and Onyx. You only have binding.
And I suppose the other thing is that, let's say that, if you have absolutely nothing going on for your next turn, then maybe you don't have to choose Alrund's Epiphany, right?
Yeah, then you just go full.
You just pick, Kiora, Onyx, Valky, or Vorinclex, and that's still a really hard choice for the opponent.
That lethal threat instantly didn't exist before, and now it exists in Standard, which is definitely an upgrade there. And people experimented with the Cultivator, the 4-mana 3/4 that fetches you a land untapped, which is important to know, so you can still have Dispute up. It's a good card.
Do you think that's going to stay in the list, or do you think that's ultimately not good enough?
It's really hard. That's a meta-dependent choice, right? If you see aggro, you kind of want the body there. If there's not enough aggro, it's fine without.
I mean, I kind of love it with Yorion too,
It's beautiful.
That's so sweet. Yeah. And the untapped, like, that's a huge thing, right? Because CGB and I were talking about this versus binding the old gods. Now, obviously, in the Sultai deck, you just get to play both if you want, so that's kind of cool. But maybe you don't have the room for it. But one of the things that I love about it is that binding as a ramp is very slow, right? So you get the land the following turn, and it comes in tapped. Whereas with the Cultivator, you get it this turn untapped, right? So it's almost like 2 extra mana in a way.
It is definitely, it both fits a different slot in the deck as well, right? The binding, what I always like to say is, when I see turn 3 taking Yorion in hand, is like telling me, oh, I have a binding, by the way. Right? Like, absolutely. You kind of get those feelings, and binding per se is just also a really great card to deal with everything, right? Like the Vortex post sideboard and those kind of things. But and also Eureka Moment is also a card people considered playing in a deck, which is draw 2 and ramp 1. Play an extra land, so it's like the big growth spiral, right?
I want to talk about this actually, because this was a card that I thought would be a most obvious card that people would consider playing, right? Now, so it has the pros and the cons, right? So in the late game, for example, I think it's a lot stronger than Growth Spiral because you draw an extra card. In the early game, though, of course, the Growth Spiral, that's where the Growth Spiral is really good, is getting you from 2 to 4 mana, right?
Exactly.
So, like, what... I guess I still think that Growth Spiral is just a stronger card in a vacuum. Yeah. But like, what do we think about moving that effect from, turn 2 to maybe turn 3 if you manage to get some other ramp going in the early game? Like, do you think it's still good enough, or does it fit into the curve properly?
It's a good question. I do agree Growth Spiral is by far the better card, mostly because, we cannot play it in Standard, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one of the things. And 2 mana to go to 4 is huge in faster
really
sets,
strong.
Right? The 4 mana card is really interesting. If there would be a meta where there are more control decks around, and you would play Shock Typhoon main, then I could see Eureka Moment being a really good card for this deck, because having the option to Shock Typhoon or draw 2 and ramp, or maybe destroy, like, it's more of a control instant type of thing going. I would say it would be really good. But we have a lot of aggressive decks right now that are also around the meta, right? So I think it's not that strong, but I would love it to be stronger for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It seems to me like if there were decks that were wanting to play both like Saw It Coming and like these other suspend instants that are playing green, it seems like it could be a fairly strong card in those kind of a deck, right?
Yeah, it feels like a card that's really great if you have more choices. Because in this deck you have maybe 1 or 2 counters main and then maybe like some instant removals. But if you had something like a Shark, for example, huge, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, so the ultimatum deck that's playing really proactively is not that interested in leaving up mana, right? So exactly. that's a good point there. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so I dig that, man. It's always nice to see the ultimatum list evolving, because that was one of my pet decks of this current format. And okay, so let's talk about what are some of the other decks that have been impacted?
So there, I would say 2 decks I would consider have a slot in the meta, and 1 deck that maybe could join the meta, and I will name those 3. And we have Prismari Dragons, we have Boros Winota, and we have Rakdos Sacrifice. Those 3 are the decks that got support from STRIXHAVEN and could fit in the meta quite well, and there were a lot of successes with those decks so far, so those 3.
So I was looking at some SCG Tour results. I was just kind of scanning, and the only one of those decks that you mentioned that I saw kind of anywhere close to the top 8 was the Prismari Dragons deck. I saw a copy of that. I think it was like in 10th place or something in one of the SCGs. So let's talk about that deck for a moment. This deck, to me, it kind of seems like an adaptation of LSV's Izzet deck from the past format, but with some tweaks, obviously, to bring in Galazeth Prismari and a couple of other things. Am I kind of on track with that?
Exactly. It is basically a tempo control deck that has now a bit more mid-range action in it, and has the treasures are really nice, right? I mean, you have Opus, the new card, which you can ramp into a treasure, or you can just play it as a high mana spell and just draw 2 cards, tap 2 things, do 4 damage, right? Do some stuff, get a 4/4. Really impactful card, but it lacks counters right now. It doesn't have as many counters as it used to have, which kind of is awkward if you play that playstyle where you want to attack with a dragon and you have count up, right? Which is where you felt good. Right now you have maybe like a turn 4 Prismari Elder Dragon with a Frostbite up, right? Something like this, because you generated treasure. And yeah, it's an awkward list to say. I think there's a lot of evolvement in that list as well. I think right now you can even play Tomes main, and there's so much to do with that deck. I think it is a solid deck, and obviously heavy counter tempo lists are usually good against the control lists like Sultai Ultimatum.
Yeah, it does seem like a list that would prey on that deck specifically. And I love that the Maze Mind Tome being able to tap for mana. Like that's that's a nice little adaptation right there.
I want to mention that.
Yeah. So that deck got Galazeth Prismari. It got the Magma Opus. What other Strixhaven cards is it running?
You can see a test of talent in the sideboard, the new counter spell that removes all the cards in a library. You definitely want to have access to this card. Other than that, there are not too many cards. It's definitely those two cards that you see.
Let's talk about Test of Talents then. CGB and I were thinking that would be probably pretty strong against rogues, and maybe against like the ultimatum decks as well. Who's it really good against?
It's really good against ultimatum, because you can counter most of the threats except the binding. Against rogues, it's a really tricky card. It's a really tricky card. It's not a bad card, but the rogue player, the problem with the card is it says instant and sorcery. If it would say non-creature spell, the card would be probably even better, right? But there's still lots of creatures. When you have that card on your hand, you go like, well, I cannot do anything now. Right.
That is a problem, right? You keep an opening hand with that in it, and then they just go rogue, you're dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's true.
So I see the appeal to counter Into the Story or to counter Drowning the Lock, right? That's definitely nice to do. But
that's the dream scenario.
That's how we call Disneyland, right?
yeah, Christmas Land, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Any other decks in the meta that Test of Talents is coming in against?
It's mostly that deck. I mean, it's a combo killer, right? That works great.
Yeah.
It also goes okay against all the counters, right? Because it's still good there, right? It's still good.
Yeah, I personally really like that scenario. You know, you strip that deck of counters, like especially in a control mirror. I imagine that would be like CGB was making this point that Test of Talents gets better in a deck that runs a lot of other control magic. Because you can hopefully you just save it for that one really good target, and then you have other counter magic for your opponent's creatures and that other things.
Exactly. That is a really good point. That is what I mentioned, right? If you play that card, you need all the cards to support around it, and then choose wisely. Removal, that counter, this counter, like you go in that complete control scenario. You have to choose your correct cards.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Yeah. So that's really cool, man.
No.
Side note, are these Prismari decks ever running the Prismari command, or does that card just not really have a home at the moment?
If it would be 2 mana, it would be cool.
yeah, a little too expensive. Yeah,
I'm not a fan. I mean, it's a good card, right? It's not a bad card. It's maybe post-rotation. Bone Crusher does something similar for 2 mana. Just saying.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing, man. That was one of the issues that we were running into, is that like it's like it's too expensive at 3 mana, but it would be broken at 2 mana. So that's the problem. It's like if you could pay 2.5 mana for it, it would be perfect, but we can't do that in Magic, so that's kind of unfortunate. Yeah,
maybe choose 1 and 2 mana would be fine.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so and then you spoke about Winota, man. Like, is she back? Like, is the Boros Wrecking Ball back, or what's going on there?
I mean, I'm not a fan of Winota, but I have to admit the deck is way more consistent, because there are 2 cards from Strixhaven that upgrade this deck a lot, and I saw like Beekeeper, Martin Juicer, other player having a lot of success with Boros Winota, and obviously you have to be good with Winota as well, but now it feels more that deck can win even without Winota because of those new cards. And the first one we have to mention here, which is a really, really good card, is Elite Spellbinder.
Yeah, that card is fantastic.
Amazing card, right? 3 mana, human, 3/1 flying, and then removing a card is like a board wipe or just anything is really huge.
Brutal.
And even a good hit for Winota, right? You hit it, and then you just take away all the removal spells. So that card is definitely a really, just on its own, right? Even without Winota, really good on-curve card, protects your stuff, and then you have the Historian Blade Artist.
The Blade Historian.
Historian, yeah. Obviously, right?
Fantastic hit.
Even if you don't have Winota and just play it from hand, had the human before, right? It's already 6 damage in the air.
It's kind of, it reminds me of, what was it, the Rowdy Crew? Was that the card that we were hitting off of Winota in...
the double the damage scenario,
yeah, in Historic, right? So it's kind of like that. I feel like it's that power level of card.
Similar, right?
is maybe not as good, but it's kind of like it's getting there. It's getting there.
It's hard to say, right? It's a playable card from your hand, while the other card was not really playable for your hand.
That's true.
But it was a better hit.
That's true.
Right? So it's between, I would say.
Right. But definitely like I like that it gives you that kind of like this turn payoff, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to like, because in the past with Winota, we were just getting good cards, right? We were just getting Kenrith, or we were just getting the, what was the Basri's Lieutenant, right? Which is like, it's fine. I'm happy to get that for free, but it's not necessarily ending the game, right? Whereas, so I like that we have that kind of potentially end the game scenario.
Kenrith is still the other best hit you can get, so you kind of need to play it, right? I mean, double strike and trample usually is also really nice to have.
That's a good point. If you can have both, why not? Okay, so as is usually the case, I feel like consistency is an issue with the deck. Like, is it feeling more consistent now, or what?
It is way more consistent because also there's the 2 mana drop. This is a more controversial addition to the deck. The Professor, the white one where you can learn on turn 2.
Oh, symbology.
That's why this deck is definitely ridiculous in best of 1, because it guarantees you a turn 3 drop, which is a spirit, right? You always learn for a turn 3, so you always have the 2/3 at least, which is so powerful, right?
And that card not being human is kind of tilting, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's a core. So it's like,
you know what else, man? It just occurred to me that card could be a mutate target as well.
Yeah, it could be.
Like maybe that's not, maybe.
I mean, I
maybe
don't know
not,
where white mutate's going, but
white mutate maybe not, but I was always on the lookout for like good, cheap, non-human cards in those mutate decks for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I was also looking for the shapeshift in the last set for Winota, It's just,
but
it didn't work because it's a human too. It's so sad.
Rip.
I was like, damn.
Rip. Okay, that's really cool, man. I'm glad to see that card showing up, because that's CGB and I actually foretold that would be one of the better cards in the set.
Good card, yeah.
So it's so flexible and just gives you so many options. So really glad to see that.
Yeah, it's definitely good, and
yeah. But it seems like the Winota doesn't seem to be showing up at like any of the top tables. Is that right?
I'm not sure. I think it was high on ladder for like 4 or 5 days, and like pros played it and everyone played it. I didn't check this one. I don't think this one is on tournaments because it doesn't feel right. It's just...
I feel like it's just too swingy, it's just like I feel like pros like to be able to rely on their decks a little bit more.
I mean, Maxos is more powerful if you want to go for the
that's true,
for the power level.
And more consistent too. I mean, that's one of the nice things about the deck like Goblins, right? Is that the B plan is fine.
Yep, completely fine. Yeah, but that is what I mean. The B plan of the deck improved a lot because you have the playable 4 and 3. That's why I think the deck is definitely playable again.
Yeah. I and being able to just play like the doggo and stuff like that to like protect your Winota.
Yeah, exactly.
Even just protect your 3/1 flyer, right? That can
doggo, Elset.
Yeah. So man, I mean, here's the thing. I feel like for a long time that deck for me has felt like it should be good enough to get there, right? This is why we keep seeing like Martin User, we keep seeing Croakies, right? It's like every time they have a chance to revisit the deck, it's like, oh, maybe it's good enough now.
Yeah. I still remember the day when he went 42-0 with Winota in best of 1, and then he writes me a message, "Hey bro, you should play this. Send me the list," and I go like 2-7. He was like, No. You cannot play that deck. You unlock this person on Earth. I was like, yeah.
That's it, man. Yeah. How do you do with Coco? Are you a Coco player?
I'm really good with Coco. Okay. Really good. That's a card. It's an instant. It's better.
There you go. Okay, there you go. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then you mentioned one other deck, Rakdos. Let's talk a little bit about what Rakdos is doing.
It's Rakdos Mardu, actually, and that deck actually went second place in the CFB Showdown, top 8 at some tournaments, and also some other tournaments. So that is actually a deck that is playable, and if Rogues is around, this deck it crushes Rogues. It has many new cards. So this is a deck that actually plays many new cards, and it plays around the Blood Avatar card, the flip cards.
Extus?
Extus flip card.
Yeah.
It plays around that card.
Yeah.
Which is ridiculous, and it has the Eye Twitch, the 1/1 flyer with Learn. It plays the 2 mana Make a Pest with Learn. It plays many Learn spells, right? The pests, the removal.
So is this version of the deck playing the Witch as well?
This version is not playing the Witch, but I had a deep discussion about the Witch in this deck and not. It's a tricky. It depends on the meta there a lot.
Yeah. This was one of our biggest questions as well coming into the set, was would that card be playable? Because it seems like right on the edge, right? It's kind of like
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, it doesn't line up well against Bone Crusher, but maybe that just means that you play it on turn 4 or 5, right?
Yeah, but that's mostly too late to do it there, right? And you want to, like, the Plump is also really strong, Plump into something.
Yeah.
The Storm card, where you can sacrifice cards to copy it.
Yeah.
Draw a card, lose a life, which is cool with the Witch, but it's cool by itself. Like, if you have like 4 pests or something, and they go like, Extinction Weight, 2 mana, draw 4. Opponent is tapped out, and you have like a full hand again, which is really powerful, right?
Not bad. Yeah, one thing I like about that card is, like, worst case scenario, you can just cantrip it at instant speed, right? So it's totally, that card exceeded my expectations for sure.
Yeah, mine too. I was a bit surprised. I was reading the cards, like, that's a good card, right? In the right shell, it's absolute incredible. And the turns you can do in this deck are really, really, really strong. So turn 3, I had so you play turn 1, right? Creature. You play a turn 2, maybe like a creature or a token or whatever, and you play Claim in the deck. And there are some aggressive decks around on the ladder, right? So you claim the creature with 2 mana open, and then you just sacrifice all your creatures.
Oh, you just plum? There you go.
No, you can do that, but you can sacrifice all your creature with the Blood Avatar card.
Oh, no way. That's right, because on 3 mana you can do that.
Yeah, it costs 8 mana, and for each creature you sacrifice, it costs 2 less, right?
So just turn 3, attack for 6.
Turn 3, and they have to sacrifice a card on top of that. So if they curve, you clean the board. Yeah, and you have like this thing on board, and it's just absolutely, it just goes off, right? And then when you have like an Eye Twitch on turn 1, you learn. You just get another card.
So you just get something else.
Yeah,
for your
I played
next
this
turn.
when I made the guide for with Florian Klein, who created the deck, and I was like, "What the hell just happened here?" That's one of the most powerful turns I ever experienced. I was like, "What?"
I feel like that's like if your Priest of the Forgotten Gods was also like a 4/4 flyer or something, you know?
I was shocked. I was literally shocked what just happened. And
okay, that's pretty gas. I like that. So what are some of the other cards that form the core of the deck?
You play Croxa, good card against rogues. You play Village Rites, goes well with Croxa, goes well with Pests, goes well with Claims. You play a Crone War, 1 or 2. You play the Predator, which sacrifices as well, right? You like those sacrifice effects once you play Claim in the main. So it's more of a sacrifice deck. And Woe Strider.
Any Woe Strider, or is that okay?
Woe Strider, like 3 off, I think, and 2 to 3 Croxa main. That always depends on the meta, but against rogues, this deck is pretty strong. I mean, you just it's ridiculous.
I believe that. Yeah. I mean, I imagine even Eye Twitch must just be an annoying card against rogues, right? Is.
And then there's one card that makes this deck even better, and that is the 3 mana Bastion Enchantment.
Oh yeah, right. So that's kind of one of your win cons, yeah?
Exactly, yeah. You ping and ping and ping and ping and ping, and the opponent has to do math. Okay, if I block this, then I take their damage, and then this happens, and you can sacrifice everything and finish the game off just with the pings, right?
Yeah.
Which alone is really powerful.
And I even like something as simple as if you have a Pest in play and you have the Bastion, then that's a 3-point life swing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty strong.
Yeah, it's really strong.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's not too much enchantment hate except the binding in the game 1 scenario. So that card on the board, you have to do some good combat math there.
Yeah, especially, here's the problem too, is that when there are multiple of them out, that's when it really goes off, right?
That's when it gets dangerous.
Yeah, I remember playing in Ikaria Limited, and who like if a player ever resolved two of those, it was basically just game over.
Yeah,
You
it's
know?
over, right? You need
It's
something
like
to gain life.
yeah, you can't attack, you can't block, you can't use removal, you can't do anything. You're
Yeah.
just dead.
Yeah, and so those pings, if you play against the Sultai Ultimatum, is a bit of a harder matchup because they have removal, but you can still, even after Ultimatum, you can still dirtle and sacrifice everything you have and manage them to put them on 0, right? Which is what this deck can do, and that is why I think if you want to play a really cool deck that's funny and still strong, I think that's the deck to play right now.
Okay. Yeah, that does seem really cool. So I'm thinking about this Extus with the avatar on the back. So this deck does run the Mardu colors, did you say?
Yep. The lands,
okay.
For it.
So you actually, so is that the only white card that you're
the only
giving
white
yourself?
Card. Yep. The only
okay.
White card,
yeah, okay, that makes sense. And I do, and again, in a sack deck, I like that idea, right? Because you could get back your Eye Twitch, or you can get back, some creature you sacked earlier in the game.
Yeah, for me, I did play it sometimes, not that much. And Christoph Prince told me yesterday he actually played that side a lot when he went for the metagame challenge with the deck and went 7-0. Okay. So it worked out well for him as well. And he likes the Voldemort, how he's calling it. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's a fine play on turn 5 and any turn later, right? You just, you play it, you do something, you cast another spell, you're kind of good to go. I feel like, if you get even one card back from the graveyard.
It's value, right? It's always value. Yeah. And the card itself is just beautiful. The design, right? The art.
Oh, and hold on. Here's another thought that I just had. Okay, so you, at some point early in the game, you have your turn 3 avatar, you hit your opponent for 6, right? And then they kill it. Later in the game, you can just get it back with Extus, right? So you play your Extus, you return the other Extus to your hand from the graveyard, and then you can play the...
It's non-legendary. So you can also not get Croxa back. Extus is a legendary in the front, I think.
Oh, wait, so does the clause say that it has to be a non-legendary card that you get from your graveyard?
Yeah,
that's such a bummer.
Yeah.
That's such a bummer, man.
Doesn't work with Croxa either, yeah.
They thought of this, man. They thought it through. Yeah. Okay, that's too bad. Oh, well.
Yeah. I'm not too sure, but I think so. Let me actually double check this.
Yeah. That'd be a good thing to know. Because that'd be really powerful otherwise.
I don't think it's true. Yeah, so Exos is a legendary on the front side. And it's non-legendary, yeah. Just wanted to make sure.
Okay, bummer. Oh, well. Anyway, but still, really synergy-driven deck, right? Like, this seems like one of the more synergy decks in the format at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, with the Learn, that is probably the one that uses the Learn mechanic the most, which is a new mechanic from STRIXHAVEN. But then you also have Magecraft decks, right? I mean, I think Magecraft decks were the decks everyone was, trying the first week. Boros, Celestia, also mono white Magecraft, with the Lumimancer and Leonin, and then just go off right in one turn and win the game. But those decks didn't stick too long, but it was a early thing.
Yeah, it's another thing that I like about this Rakdos deck is that it seems to be really not dependent on Eldraine for the most part, kind of a deck.
Yep.
And so it could be really strong post rotation.
Yeah, you lose Croxa though, because I think
that's true.
Theros hits also rotation, right? Yeah.
And Claim, I suppose you lose Claim, so that is a shame. But
it'll be a different type of sacrifice deck. The Witch will be probably playable.
Yeah, I mean, in a post-Bone Crusher world, I imagine the Witch gets a lot better. Definitely. Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Yeah, something to keep an eye on. I feel like Rakdos is another one of these decks where, like ever since Cat left the format, it's been just, on the edge of playable, right? It's just you're always kind of checking it out. It's never quite good enough.
Yeah, it felt like a meta deck. It's okay, everyone's playing Rogues. I'm just going to play Rakdos, right? It feels like this, so everyone's playing Sultai Ultimatum, let's bring in the mono white and mono retters or something like this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. But I do also like that, the mana base makes it fairly easy to play 3 color in that deck and stuff, which is really cool.
Yep, definitely.
Cool, okay. I like that. Okay, anything else happening? Okay. I did want to talk about, before we get to historic, I wanted to hit on the this new Sultai deck which people are playing in the format with the what's that card called? It's the dredge card. Why am I blanking on the name? It's the enchantment, the 4-drop enchantment.
Oh yeah, wow. Okay, yeah, Titan's Nest. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that is.
It's Titan's Nest. Nest, yeah. So take us into this deck a little bit. Okay. So right when Ikoria came out, that was the card that I was most excited about to mess around with, and of course it just didn't get there. It just was not good enough. But so what has Strixhaven brought to the standard format, which has made people consider playing Titan's Nest now?
It's really funny that Strixhaven is actually not a set that impacted the deck that much, right? So
is it just more of a meta choice, really?
It's more of a meta choice. So when I was the creator of the deck is JS2, the Korean professional Magic player, and 4 hours ago of this recording, me and JS2 were doing a video together, right? So I could ask him everything I want, and he told me he didn't want to play Sultai Ultimatum, but he wanted to play something that is strong against Sultai Ultimatum and still is good against the Timur matchup. That was his main goal, and he found that Titan's Nest is so strong because there's not too much removal for the enchantment, and people completely underestimate that power. And the only new card you see in the deck is actually Onyx, because it also has the effect where you can discard cards in the graveyard, and Magecraft is strong as well. With Titan's Nest you can just play everything you want.
Off. Yeah, exactly.
And Call Time, I think, had more impact on that deck because of Auron's Epiphany. 2 mana, extra turn, 2 tokens.
Yeah, that's good, pretty nice.
Sounds usually good. 1 mana, hardcast Shock Typhoon into 2 mana. Epiphany is usually it's good. It's a good scenario, right?
That's very strong for sure. Yeah, it's so funny to me, man, because like sometimes it makes you wonder if, I think this happens a lot where you'll have a powerful option and then people will try it for a while and it doesn't work and then they just forget about it, right? Yeah. And then we think like we could have been playing this deck for months and it just took somebody thinking of trying it again.
Yeah, I think like he put it also so well together, and it is also really fun to play because the way you can play with Titan's Nest, and you have to think a lot as well, right? You have a lot of cantrips, like draw discard cards, draw discard, so you have to be really knowledgeable what to take and what not to take there. But yeah, out of Strixhaven, there's not really some new cards. It's just maybe Test of Talents in the sideboard was a consideration, and Onyx,
Yeah, okay. So that's the main win condition of the deck then, is like some combination of Auron's Epiphany, Shock Typhoon, maybe the Onyx win con.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, and then the rest of the deck is like a lot of cantrips and maybe some controlling elements, is that right?
Yeah, you have a lot of like first and 4 mana, draw 3, discard 1, and you have strategic planning, right, where you also get cards in the graveyard. A lot of those type of cards, but you have to go more on the removal side, so you play like 3 board wipes, 5 single target removals, but only 3 counters, and you can play a lot of one-offs because of the cantripping, right? You can search your cards together you want, so it's really nice in a deck like this to play one-offs. Yeah, I feel like you're right. The choice about what you can trip, and then also the mana, right? I feel like this is one of the things that I remember running into playing Titan's Nest is your land sequencing, and like the way that you play your pathways is super important because that's where you get bottlenecked is your colored mana. Yeah, there's a simple rule in the set: you want 1 green, 2 black, and the rest can be blue. There's rarely an occasion where you need 3 blacks, so that's, except against Aggro, you can go for 3 blacks, but that's about it. Just remember this. Yeah.
So that's for the plebs. That's the rule that we follow.
That's the main rule. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
He told me that, like, that's the rule. I was like, okay.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of the Timur Adventure days where like you get your red and your green covered, and in the late game it was just all blue for the same reason, because you're wanting to cast like multiple, you Fae of Wishes, and then you want to get 2 Brazen Borrowers down and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, really similar there. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Titan's Nest, so I definitely have to try this deck out. It's probably the most playable it's ever been. So
yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to pivot a little bit into talking about historic before we go out here, because I know this is also a format that you've been playing, and so basically, I had a lot of fun playing historic. For the week 1 meta game, I was taking a lot of turns and trying out various Phoenix decks and stuff like that. And my initial impression was actually that those decks were not as good as everyone expected they were going to be. It's kind of interesting to me that as powerful as cards like Mizzix's Mastery, Time Warp, Brainstorm, Faithless Looting were, they don't and immediately seem to be actually dominating the format so far. Would you say that that's correct?
This is a really hot topic, especially about Phoenix, because the Phoenix deck has to be built so well for a specific meta, because you need like a deck that is graveyard to game 1. Game 2 I want to be less graveyard, so it's so much about building. But I have to say the Phoenix deck definitely got way stronger with Faithless Looting and Brainstorming. So that is definitely a huge... that upgrade there is undeniably strong. And I still think Phoenix is a tier 1.5 to around there. It's 100% a deck you go to a tournament and say, I play Phoenix. It's definitely on that level.
So let's talk about it, though. I feel like Phoenix... This is my impression with Phoenix, that it's just such a skill-intensive deck, right?
Super skill-intense.
I think that's one of the challenges. I remember, I was playing a Phoenix deck on stream, and you popped in to say hello, and there's just so many lines with that deck, man. It's like, when do I cast my looting? When do I cast my brainstorm? When do I need to try to find more Phoenixes versus just play to the board? Oh my God, there's just so much going on there. Yeah. So I think that might be one of the reasons why, like people like LSV can top 8 with the deck in standard, and people like me at, 50% at best win rate on the ladder playing the deck kind of thing. To be fair,
you played Grixis Phoenix.
I did play Grixis Phoenix.
Yeah, which is a bit different.
Yeah. So here's the thing about Grixis Phoenix is that with a good draw, you're unbeatable, and as soon as anything bad happens, like the mana stumbles or whatever, then it's just an awful deck. But
you have the Arcanist Thoughtseize situation where you just can win against anything, right? That's definitely a plus there.
Yeah, exactly. So I was definitely not playing probably the best version of the deck. But do you currently think then that Phoenix is the strongest configuration?
Yeah, I think I think the only other configuration to think about is actually Temur Phoenix, which people have some success with.
Is that to play that new green cantrip?
Cantrip, and you have easy access to enchantment and removal. Just the green sideboard cards tend to be actually good over the black.
So you can hit Rest in Peace, postboard, stuff like that?
Yeah, it's a bit easier, and you play Arcanist as well in that deck. In that Temur deck, you play Arcanist, where I think in the Izzet Phoenix version, I would not play them more than 2, because I would always play the Sprite Dragon on turn 2. It's just way more powerful, because the main goal on turn 3 is to play 3 spells. Yeah. So you do not want to, that's just the main goal, but there's so many configurations, and as I said, it's a meta thing, right? Young Pyromancer, the Entity, there are just many cards you can add and configure, like Crackling Drake, Postboard is good, and so on.
I liked how you were talking about that decision to play the Pyromancer, because it's better in the postboard games when your opponent is targeting the graveyard, and it gives you an alternate win con, basically. Yeah,
exactly. You have 2 cards in the main that are not graveyard reliant, right? You just play your stuff, and maybe turn 3 you already have 5 power on board, which is totally... Or Phoenix, and then you have 8 power on board turn 3. Still powerful.
Yeah, I also like it because I feel like people actually tend to bot out their sweepers against Phoenix and stuff like that. They tend to trim down or really focus their removal suite.
Yep.
And so I feel like you can kind of steal games that way as well.
Yeah, that is a really good point, and that's probably the main reasons why people lose to Phoenix. They go like, okay, I just bought in all my graveyard hate, and then they have like the Sprite Dragon, which is a 5/5, and the Storming Entity on the other side, which is also 5/5. And you go like, and the Pyromans, you go, okay, well, I have a rest in peace. Yeah, good job.
Well, that's what I found playing these Phoenix decks against any control deck, was that I felt like you could put your opponent in this really awkward position where they feel forced to boarding in the graveyard hate, but then like you can almost board into just like a tempo aggro control deck, right? You can bring in some mystical disputes and and just have your aggressive dragon creatures and stuff, that kind of damned if they do and damned if they don't, right?
Yeah, like, it's really tricky to know, right? On the ladder, I would say it's hard, right? You don't never know, like, strategies wise on what level that person built that deck. In an open deck list on a tournament, you kind of get the feeling, right? What's going on there?
Yeah, that's true.
And I think the Crackling Rake is also a really cool card from the sideboard, because even if they have Rest in Peace, that is still a 24, because it counts the exiled cards as well. So you can just keep playing cards. It doesn't matter.
That's nice. That's really that's like, a big brain.
Yeah, there are a lot of little things you can do, right? And I like Phoenix. I always like that deck, so I think it's definitely good.
Okay, so like tier 1.5, maybe tier 1 in the hands of a really excellent player. You think
it's a super good deck you can play at a tournament. So it's somewhere there, right? Depends on the meta. Yeah.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that. That's coming in a little higher than where I thought it would be.
Yeah,
based on what I saw.
Same actually. I didn't thought it's that strong, but now if especially the Andrea Mengucci configuration, which I was looking at, was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, Mangu tends to know what he's doing.
Yeah, he really knows.
Yeah. So okay. So we talked about Phoenix. What are some of the other decks that are really popping in the meta right now? So here's a question that I had for you. A lot of people were saying that Jund is dead as a result of this new meta game. Is that true?
Okay, we go to that question after. I will go a week back to say what a week back probably the best deck were, and still are really strong. So they are still all in that Phoenix area, right? You have Celestia Company, you have Gruul Aggro, and you have Historic Rogues, right? So those three decks,
in that meta game, yeah.
So if you look at those three decks, which card could be really good?
Yeah,
Claim and all seem to
Claim, decent. Mayhem Devil, Priest. Yep.
You have escape cards pre-boarded against rogues. Your claims are good against this deck. There's something there, right? That's why I think it's never dead. That's why I think Jund Food, Jund Company, or even Jund Citadel, those decks still exist, and they show results now again.
Okay. I suppose Jund is most dead against like these extra turns decks and like these like Mizzix Mastery combo decks, right? Like there's I think maybe you were saying that or Croaky said that the thing that really beats Jund is combo.
Yep, exactly. That's true.
Yeah. So if you're doing these like turn 4 cast an ultimatum kind of combo decks, that's makes the Jund deck look pretty small ball in comparison.
Yeah, because Jund is like every Jund deck, even the company deck is a mid-range deck that can grind. It's like this double-edged sword, right? Like sometimes you have to go super aggro, and sometimes you just grind with trails depending on the configuration. Against a control player, because all the control decks are NOS at control lists, right? And you cannot draw a second card, and a trail player is like, wait a second, I take this on my hand. And I'll play, nice. I have a Narset in play, by the way. So,
no problem,
right?
Yeah. Okay, so that's good to know. So that means that basically the upshot of this is that maybe the historic metagame has not changed as much as we thought that it would.
I think the metagame is huge. Yeah. Like there's so many it was already a lot playable before, right? You had like Oz of Oros, Jund, you have engine combos, you had some Osorius control, goblins, there's elves. It's like endless, right? Gruul,
like all these control decks.
And now it's even more. Now it's even brighter, but obviously the 3 decks I mentioned before, plus Phoenix, plus maybe Junt, and then obviously between that, I mean, in that list there's the combo deck, the Tainted Pact combo deck.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, man. This is kind of the elephant in the room right now, right?
Yeah.
This is I think this has officially replaced Tybalt's Trickery in the Historic.
It's just Tybalt Trickery and good, right?
Exactly.
That's the thing, yeah.
So give the people an overview of how this deck combos and wins.
Okay, so you play a 60 card deck, mostly with Lurrus. You play 2 Tainted Pact in the deck, which is a 2-mana instant spell where you can exile your library until you hit a card you didn't exile so far, right? And you can choose if you want to take that card on your hand or not. So you play basically one off all the time, right? Because it doesn't matter if you play 2 Tainted Pact because you played it from your hand, so it's not exiled. So what happens is you exile your entire deck because your win con is Thassa's Oracle. You basically just win with Thassa's Oracle. So you play Thassa's Oracle, and then on the stack you play Tainted Pact, you mill your library, and then even if they remove Thassa's Oracle, you have Devotion 0. Yeah.
It still works?
Yeah, it should still work, and then...
I did not know that, actually. That's really nice.
So the interaction is really hard with this one, right? I'm not 100% sure, but I was talking about this with someone yesterday, and they say it works, so I just go off of that. I just think it should work, technically. And so that's a problem, right? How do you interact with a combo deck like this? Obviously, consistency, you can say, but...
So let's talk about that, right? So you're only playing 2 copies of your big combo thing in the deck, right? So how do you work that out? Like, what's the whole rest of the deck?
So there are like 3 configurations. I saw four, Grixis, Sultai, Esper, and Justimir. Because you can only play one-offs, right? You want to have the best cards. You want to play all the removal as one-off. You want to play some board vibes. You want to play counters. You want to play a lot of card draw, obviously, right?
Well, and lands too, right? All of your lands have to be one-offs. Yeah, that is
a really good fact. Yeah, your lands have to be one-offs too, which is doable right now, right? With
you can do lands, it, but
right?
Yeah, I suppose the DFCs really make that possible, probably.
Yep. So that's how you build the deck, right? And if you go what direction of color you go, Sultai, you can get the card. You get the card back from your graveyard, so you have basically 2 of it, of anything in the deck. And there are so many different ways to build the deck, but it's just basically, I lost so many times on turn 4 with like an aggro deck, right? And you go like, they have 3 life, and I just go like, Thassa's Oracle, Tainted Pact, and go like, okay, click.
All right, man.
I'm always like,
okay, dude.
Click this now, though.
I'm not gonna make this easy for you. Yeah, man. That honestly, that's what bothers me so much about Historic, especially Best of One. Like, think about all of these jokers playing Tainted Pact and Best of One, and they just have it every time. Every time, man.
And if not, they remove everything right before it comes. It's a really, really tricky deck to play against, which makes you need to have blue of some sort to counter Tainted Pact.
Yeah, which is just, I don't know, man. It's just so annoying when a metagame gets that way, right? It's like when you need to play counter magic main just so that you don't lose to the stupid combo deck.
And then also the point I just mentioned before we started here, that it's an instant speed, right? So if you tap out once, they will do it end of your turn and do 1, and they have Oracle on hand, right? And I just play it. It's the same stupid thing. If it would be sorcery, okay. It's a bit better to deal with.
It's so brutal. It's just so brutal, and especially when it's actually playable. Like,
it is.
That's the really frustrating thing. So where do you put it in the metagame as far as tiers?
The same tier list as all the decks I just mentioned before, in the really good list.
So it can keep up with those decks.
And like, it was like in the beginning I was like, this may be a meme, and then like other people tested it and told me it's not a meme, it's really good. And then I see results in a Star City game, and like in the top 8 we have 5 Demir combos.
Oh my gosh, dude. That's nuts, dude. That is nuts.
It's bad. It's bad.
It's so funny because CGB and I placed a bet about when the first bans would happen in Historic. He chose under a month, I chose over a month. And I thought it was a safe bet because I was like, I think it's going to take a while to shake out between Faithless Looting and Brainstorm and Time Warp and all of this stuff. And I just think it's kind of ironic that I might lose the bet based on this stupid card that neither of us even paid attention to, you know?
If it's a card, I think it's that card because it makes the format not as fun, right? If you play against it, and like there's like Simic Company is also a deck that's played right now, which I think is strong. Like you just play Simic Company, you have the counter spell that also is a fight spell from STRIXHAVEN.
Yeah, that
which
card
is my favorite
gas.
card from the
Such
set.
a good card. Yeah.
So just with that, right, we have actually a way to deal with it, and it's a bit annoying. Yeah, that's what it is.
Yep. I wish I could remember the name of the card, but just to make sure that the folks know what it is, it's blue green
or something like this. Delusive denial, maybe.
Divisive denial.
Divisive denial.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. But it's one mode is you counter a non-creature spell unless its controller pays 3. Is that right?
Yeah.
And then the other is just one of your creatures fights one of their creatures.
What a great card.
So it is a really, really cool card. I mean, I have to say that personally, I think just a lot of the best cards from Strixhaven are these like 2-mana interactive spells that they printed in the set. Some really strong ones.
This one especially is really strong.
I also wonder, I mean, I imagine that the Paulo Vitor card could be good in Historic as well. Do you think that that's true?
Yeah, you play this one in Celestia's Company, right? Celestia's Company's play style is more like a Death and Taxes, which means the white cards are annoying for opponent, and like you play Skyclave Apparition, right? ETB, you remove something, you play this Spellbinder comes in, you remove a card from hand, you play maybe Talia from sideboard, everything costs 1 more, you play Redain, that's also really annoying. Every white card is just annoying, and then on the green side you have the big creatures that just go in.
So it's kind of like the modern humans deck. It's kind of like disruptive aggro deck.
Disruptive aggro. There's also a humans deck in Historic, which it's not bad. Also human, Esper human. You have even more like Meddling Mage, and just even more of those type of humans, right? But again, I think the Celestial Company is the most complete deck against most of the decks, but the combo deck is still really tricky.
Do you think that this like when I hear Selesnya, I think of 2 builds, right? I think of like the Angels Company decks, and then I think about this kind of more humans based like disruptive one. Like, do you put one of those above the other right now?
I think the disruptive one is better.
Okay.
Yeah, it is better. The Angel Company deck, maybe the bound one with blue can have some counters, which is good against the combo, right?
Okay.
And the turns are more powerful in the Angel deck. If you have the complete nuts, right? Turn 3 Angel, turn 4 Coco, attack 40 life, attack 20 damage. Yeah. Okay, wow. Yeah. Good job, right?
Yeah.
You're a good player.
Decent.
But besides that, the other one is more geared against all the cards. And white is good with Rest in Peace, which is probably one of the best sideboard cards in the game right now.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, so it seems the impression I get is that people are playing like more Rest in Peace and less Grafdigger's Cage now. Yeah.
Definitely,
But I mean, it's always nice to have the option. How about the Leyline, the black Leyline? Are people boarding that one in at all?
It's an okay card, but I think there's not too many good black type of decks, right? I mean, Demir control, like the Narset type of controls, is okay. There's some mono black vampires, there's some mono black aggro lists. All basically the same card: hand disruption, cheap creatures that are strong, finishing creatures, and then recursive creatures, right? Good decks. Bit lower on the power level, I think, especially against creature decks that can just go crazy, right? Company does something like this. Those are a bit the harder ones, but Leyline is an interesting card. It's not on the pair with Rest in Peace.
Rest in Peace. Yeah, good to know. Yeah, that's the way I always thought about these mono black decks. Is they always just seem like not quite as good as the other options. Yeah, probably a good budget deck, but
I think the Leyline only says opponent's cards go in exile, right?
Oh, that's pretty nice. Yeah.
But now the thing about Rest in Peace is, So I just mentioned that you have 2 aggro decks, right? And then you have Phoenix and Junt and Rogues. Rogues won a tournament, right? Just recently. And Rip Apart. Not Rip Apart. Rest in peace, Excelsior Graveyard. You will never have a card in your graveyard again.
It just turns off all those
and the Rogues are suddenly like this pixie deck with like this 1/1. I want to hit you, right? I was just like, no.
Yeah, 1/1s, 1/3 flyers.
Yeah, wow.
It's pretty dorky.
It's just suddenly nothing anymore, which is so funny. And that's why that card is also so good.
Yeah, especially if you can just kind of get it down on turn 2, right?
Yeah.
Especially on the play. It's kind of like nothing they can do about it.
They have like 12 creatures and they all do 1 damage.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Let's talk about that Historics Rogues deck because, that's pretty strong. There's a couple of things that stood out to me about it. First of all, they all seem to be favoring Kozilek's Inquisition of Kozilek over Thoughtseize, from what I can see. And the rationale I've heard for that is because they want to be able to get cheap cards out of your hand and then counter your more expensive cards later in the game.
Exactly.
Yeah. These decks, now I know that some people have run Una's Blackguard in Historic in the past. I feel like that's not really a preferred card in these modern... I don't even
know that card, I think.
Yeah, so it's like a 1 and a black, it's a 1/1 flyer, and it
Oh, the discarder.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the old rules,
Yeah, let me look it up actually because I don't.
I'm pretty sure
remember.
No one plays that one.
It seems it's like a choice, right? It's like one of the rogues that you get in Historic, and so I think a lot of people tried it out, but it seems like it just doesn't work out. So here's what it is: it's a 1/1 flyer. It's a fairy rogue, and costs 1 and a black. And it says each rogue creature you control comes into play with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card. So that is kind of the idea, right? Is that you're kind of like, it helps your Inquisition of Kozilek plan. It also helps fill your opponent's graveyard. Seems like it could be strong in the deck, but from what you're saying, it's just not powerful enough to get there.
It's a tempo deck, right? The mill aspect is completely gone basically in Historic. All you want to do is have the card in the graveyard just to enable your creatures, right? And then counter everything and just do it over and over again. So the discard effect is good, but turn 2 tapping out is usually not where you want to be in a Rogues in a tempo deck, right? You want to either counter their annoying spell if you have to, or just play your creatures and then next turn.
Yeah, it's also just one of those cards that can be too low impact at too many different points in the game.
Yeah.
So it's the kind of card that, like, imagine you're playing against like one of these, blue maybe Gearhulk decks or something. Your opponent just boards into like a bunch of sharks and stuff. This is like really not where you want to be. Yeah. So
I mean, it's pretty cool. Though. It's a cool card though, but.
It is a cool card, right?
I like it.
It seems. I mean, when it works, it's the worst feeling in the world.
What should I discard?
I've definitely gotten wrecked by it before. That's for sure. Yeah. So okay. So that's really cool. Yeah. I feel like Rogues is just like keeps getting better, right? Like it's just like. It's so funny, like we see this progression, right, where like a card is busted in Standard, and then it's busted in Historic, and then it's busted in Pioneer, and then people start trying to play it in Modern, right? And so exactly, I'm just wondering when Rogues is going to show up in Modern.
It goes down. That's what I always say. It always goes down one ladder, and now we're here, and we never know, right? I mean, like all the but then again, how do you power level Historic, right? It's definitely more powerful than Pioneer. I mean, you get like the cards you get there right now is modern-ish, right? It's not quite there, but it gets closer to that than to Pioneer.
Yeah. No, it's so weird, right? Because it's like, that's true. I feel like Historic is like half Standard, half Modern. And then we just like, not really we just kind of met in the middle, right? Whereas Pioneer is just like Standard plus, right? It's like, Yeah, so I agree. It's such a lopsided power level in the format, especially, you know, that they just decide to randomly print in these cards like the God, I can't remember the name of it, the black I'm thinking the black sack land that makes 2 black mana.
Oh, that one. That was also interesting.
Yeah, Phyrexian Tower or whatever. Yeah, like they just randomly throw this like legacy power level of card into the format and say, "Here you go, have fun," right?
Yeah,
it's randomly.
It's really, from a deck builder perspective, right? It's just amazing, right? You get like combinations of cards, and go back to the rogues. I mean, in Historic, you have push 1 mana, you have hand disruption 1 mana, you have 1 mana, draw 3, put 2 on top, right? You have so many 1 mana spells, so you can creature and 1 mana, which is so powerful, right? That's why it's like a model level-ish. And one thing that's really funny in the mirror match, because I played the deck myself as well, is if you have Brainstorm in your deck and you play against rogues, that's the best feeling ever. Because they're gonna play a rogue and mill you to like, I don't have a passage, Brainstorm, I don't need those 2 cards. And you basically draw 3 for 1, right? Against rogues. I love that feeling.
Yeah, you know, it's like with the trigger on the stack, right? Mill trigger on the stack, you just slam it down. There you go.
So good. Like drawing 3 cards for 1 mana only because they play rogues is really good.
Well, and I just wonder, like, again in Modern, right? Because you get to play Force of Negation and you get to play all these really powerful cards in Modern. So yeah, I really wonder, man. I wonder if it could show up.
Possibly.
Who knows? Who knows? And who knows when Force of Negation shows up in Historic as well, man. That's when we'll know. That's when we'll really know.
Yeah.
You know,
2 mana Planeswalker coming through soon too.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Okay, is there anything else about Historic that you feel like we should cover here?
I think we covered like the most important decks. There's maybe one deck like the Gearhulk Flash decks, Cheskai, Opus, Magnus, like the Gearhulk decks that play the new Strixhaven card, the Opus. That is something, right? We also play Epiphany. And it's mostly a Cheskai control deck with Narset, Gearhulk, and a lot of really strong cards. And one of my favorite cards, actually, from the new archive, which is probably something many enjoy me saying this, is Memory Lapse. I'm also
such a good card.
I'm a blue mage as well, right? And I like to say nope as well. So that feeling of just stopping an entire turn and I just have to do it again is so wonderful. Yeah.
I think one of the best feelings ever, right, is your opponent goes for that growth spiral and you memory lapse it.
Oh wow, beautiful!
And it's like it feels like 2 time walks, you know, it's seriously, it puts them so far behind, especially if their mana screwed.
Yeah,
you know, you have these guys. I was playing against an opponent where I think it was on turn 3 they cast Explore and I memory lapse it and they have no other land drop. And it was just GG, you know? They can never win from that position.
Yeah, and based off that, I want to talk about the last thing I see a shift right now again is Teferi plus Memory Lapse. That is basically, you know, like that combination is just,
brutal.
It's brutal, right? I think that is Azorius control can definitely come back just because of that combination alone, which is so strong, right? You can play Rip Apart, you can play this, it's just so many things, not Rip Apart, Rest in Peace. Can play so many good cards. So that's the last thing I want to mention.
I think that like these Teferi decks in the past were even sometimes going to like Pact of Negation to you know, try to really like protect that Teferi and like give them kind of an extra counter spell backup, right? And I feel like you just don't need to be doing that kind of stuff anymore with Memory Lapse in the format.
Yeah, Memory Lapse is so powerful, and imagine playing against a green type of deck and you have 4 Gusts and 4 Memory Lapse, and opponent is like, I don't want to play anymore. Just get me out of here.
Savage, dude. It's so savage.
It's literally time walking without time walks. But the interesting part is that the 5 mana extra turn card didn't find a good shell yet. There are some engines, there are some decks where you try it, but it's not as impactful as maybe many predicted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like you're saying is like, if you can get a time warp for 2 mana at instant speed, then that's probably a bit better.
Sounds better, right?
Yeah, that was my conclusion after playing time warp in Historic, was that I just like, I couldn't solve the puzzle. I couldn't figure out how to make it fast enough, consistent enough, powerful enough. Like, you really do need to be winning the game when you're taking that extra turn. And
yeah, you have to go off there, right?
yeah, and it's just like, I felt like even with Nissa, you couldn't always get there. So, and especially like, yeah, Time Warp just doesn't line up very well against Thoughtseize. You know, a lot of these disruptive decks can kind of just rob you of gas in the early turns.
Yeah, I want to mention Mistman's deck here. He played it with the engine and with Breach, so he just played it forever, right? Which is kind of funny with Tamiyan. It looked powerful, but I don't think it's near the other power levels, right? Because Rest in Peace is just still a card.
Yeah, I put Time Walk decks at tier 2 at best, I think.
At best,
in Historic.
5, yeah.
Yeah, people are gonna, I don't know, they're gonna need to really come up with something else, I think, to make those decks really competitive.
Yep.
It's not that it couldn't happen. I think, like you said, the card pool is so wide. There's so many powerful cards in the format that someone could break it. Someone could big brain it.
It's just that moment that if you don't, you need to win that turn, you do it, because the aggro plans are already so far that you will be on 3 life at that point, right? You don't have Ura anymore. You don't, it's just, that doesn't work. And the aggro decks, they also have disruption, right? Like Hand Tate, like the Arcanist deck, which is still a really good deck, Hand Tate. Then you have the Paulo, which just makes you Time Walk 7 mana. Then you have Gruul, where just, good luck trying surviving there, right? And that's the problem.
Yeah, it ended up feeling like a really busted standard deck to me. That's what it felt like, you know?
Yeah, it's like revisiting those old Nexus days.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It was kind of that power level. Like, it's really good, it's really powerful, it's just not historic power level.
We need Reclamation back. Unban Reclamation, please.
Okay, and that's a wrap for the podcast today. Thank you, Danny. We won't be inviting you back. No, I'm just kidding. It might be time to start reevaluating some unbans in Historic, right? Maybe we get Winota back. I don't know about. But maybe, right? I mean, I think that there are definitely cards which. Like, how good is Winota now that we have Muxus, right? I don't know. I just think that.
I mean, also a good point. Goblins is a deck that is actually good against those company type decks, because because company does not like Cage at all. Does not like you Krenko, because you play better on the board, right?
Yeah.
Like, company decks are bad against decks that play better on the board, like Elves or Goblins. And then on top of that, you just have that I win the game card, which they cannot play around. So with those decks like being up, you definitely can play Goblins, which is a good point.
Yeah, Goblins it's always a fine deck, you know. I think, like, if you crafted it before, you can still play it. If you're thinking about getting into Historic, I don't know. I think Goblins is still a safe deck to craft into. Maybe not as fresh and exciting as some of these other decks.
It's expensive though, right? So many red
cards. It is. Yeah, and it's not transferable. You know, you're not going to be able to play those cards.
Goblins. If you really if you love Goblins, sure. If you don't,
maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe put your attention elsewhere.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, Danny, I really appreciate you coming on the show, giving us your top level perspective on these formats. So I want to give you this moment to talk about your content, because you're really expanding this month. So, tell people about like your full-time push and the different things that you're doing around that.
Yeah, I just started doing full-time, which is tricky, right? So I stream 1 to 2 times a day on DanyTLaw on Twitch, and started pushing like 1 to 2 videos a day on YouTube as well. I usually do best of 3, but I will branch out best of 1 as well now. Mainly because I got partnered with MTG Arena Zone. Maybe some of you know it. So you're going to see my video on the website there. You see the guides plus sideboard and everything with my video there as well. I also do interviews with Luis Salvato. I just put that one online as well, because I'm networked in the Magic. So, and I also do casting. You saw me casting maybe alongside CGB once in the F2K tournament. And yeah, I'm just doing a lot of things on YouTube here and trying my best to just spread my wings, right? And it's tricky, but I think that's the best I can say what I do right now.
Awesome. Yeah. Sorry, excuse me. So definitely go check out Dany on Twitch and on YouTube. I know you've really been putting a lot of effort into those YouTube videos, trying to get that off the ground. So go give Dany a follow. I mean, I'm sure like anyone watching this on CGB's channel knows how big of a fan CGB is of Dany.
This goes vice versa.
Yeah, man. But really, I think there's a reason that we get Dany on the show to talk about meta games. I think if you want to be up on what's going on in any meta game that Dany's playing currently, like he's always one of the best resources, because not only are you creating content and thinking of decks and stuff, but I feel like you really follow other people's content a lot as well. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like a combination of your best ideas and other people's best ideas. So just, really recommend you as a resource. And also just a really cool guy who's, I feel like you always interact with your chat, you answer questions. I don't know. I just like, this is how I feel. I feel like get into Dany's community now before he's really big and has to ignore you. That's kind of how I feel, It's
it's like threshold, right? Like 300-400 viewers where you can still read chat, but after that,
That's it. It's like Dany's like that band that's still playing some of the smaller venues, and you need to go and get it now, because like this time next year, there'll be too much in chat. He won't have time. He'll be doing like big streamer things. So
I obviously say now this will not happen, like that I will neglect it, because I really try to write everyone back, right, who writes me and shows me decks and whatever, but at one point you never know, right? If you see GB with 100,000 YouTube followers, wow, that's a lot of text you get, right? I get text, but that must be hard, and I think the community building is the coolest part, and your words are really, really nice, Arjuna.
Man. Well, it's like we all see where you're headed, right? So it's just like... So get in on the ground floor, get in while, Dany he'll remember your name, he'll appreciate you, he'll answer your questions in the chat, just take advantage of that resource while you've got it. Yeah. All right, so that's going to wrap for this episode. Thanks so much for listening to and or watching the ArenaCraft podcast. You can find us on Covert Go Blues channel if you want to see, if you're listening and you'd like to see, the video version, you can always check it out there. Look at Dany's nice haircut and smiling face. You can also listen to us on Spotify. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iTunes, most of the places that you find podcasts. And we also have a Discord channel. We've had a lot of people coming in lately and leaving questions. We skipped questions this week, but we do regularly read off question of the week. So it's a really good place to, get your voice heard on the podcast. All right, Dany, hope you have a good one, my man. And to the rest of you listening, stay safe, crafties. Have a good week out there.
Have a good week.